I am here today with author Neil Rogers. He is the author of the newly released book, Bar Tips. I'm so excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. Neil, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to pick your brain a little bit today about your book. How did you come about writing this book? That's kind of the first place I want to hit with today.
Well, Allie, thanks for having me. And I will tell you, it was a COVID situation. We had moved out of our family home, large family home, into a smaller townhomes, three-level townhome. And the walls during COVID started to close in. And one of the things that I would do to keep myself from losing my mind was I would reach out to people, and I would typically do it via text. And I would text, "How are you?" And invariably I'd get a call back. It was amazing. So it was one of those things. Everybody was feeling the same way. And this one gentleman I touched base with, his name is Terry McMahon, and Terry was a wildly successful Mass Mutual general agent until his lifestyle took him to a place of some health concerns that where he needed life-saving surgery. I talked to him 18 months after he had this surgery, and it was remarkable how he had changed. And one of the things that he had done in his 18 months, he wrote a book. And he encouraged me, he said, "Well, you should write a book." And I'm looking, what do I have to write? And so that was kind of the start of it. And we talked back and forth and whatnot. And I started considering, so from there, I went ahead and started thinking about what would I write on? And I harkened back to a time when my daughter was being honored for a chamber event. And she was, one of the, the chamber, they've got an award for everything. And she was one of the fastest growing under 30. And she's a remarkable young woman. And the cool part about it was not only the award, but the person who was the keynote speaker was the gentleman who brought Five Guys burgers to New Hampshire. And for a little context, my wife and I were there, a little context, my wife and I met many years previous, 30 plus, at a restaurant in Boston called Tia's, which I mentioned in the book quite a bit. And so we had been in the hospital. She was a food waitress and I was a bartender. So anyways, the gentleman goes along. He was a really cool speaker, nuts and bolts guy, plain talk, no big words, just like you'll see in the book. All right, we're talking plain, we're giving you simple concepts. And he was talking, he got his team together. If you've spent any time in the hospitality business or served, you would know that they do a thing called pre-meal, where they talk about, and it's kind of a rah-rah session, but it's also a session where they talk about what's 86th, means is out, what the specials may be, but there's also a little rah-rah speech that's given to it. And he went and he was talking about, talking to them, and he said, "We are not in the burger business. We're not in the fry business. We're not in the soda business. We're not in the shake business. We are in the hospitality business." And I went just like this to my wife. I looked at her, I said, "We've never left the hospitality business. I've been bartending on the road for 30 plus years."
Wow.
So we really started to examine that. And then so from there, it was like, okay, that I was thinking about that after I had this conversation with Terry. So now how do I put this all together? How do I make this something? And so I recently had gone to an event, one of the first bars I worked in, a place called the Full Sail in White Horse Beach. And it was a 70th birthday party. And I'm looking at the guy, she said, "I know you were 12 years old." I mean, it was, because he was a great guy and he was still in the business. And and so we had I got the t-shirt, our original t-shirt of the bar. I recreated it. Everybody wore the t-shirts. We had this wonderful time. So I was just so full of joy afterwards thinking about that, because as a commuter student, my people that I met in the bar business in my fraternity, or my, and so I've got great friends to this day that are in there. And so we went along, and I wrote a ditty on it. And I was just like, just stream of cons like this. And it was all pouring my heart out about the time and the people and what it was like to be there. It was a private club of sorts, but the only thing you had to do was have a positive attitude and want to have a good time, and you could be a member of the club. So I had that, and then I had also just recently written a ditty on a friend of ours, again from that area growing up. Her husband was dying of ALS, so it was time we wanted to put together a fundraiser. So again, I wrote about the time of growing up there. This wasn't really about the bar business, but it was about my first couple of chapters are a little memoirish, and kind of show where I came from and what I was doing and the struggles I ran into. And but this was not a struggle. This was one of those places where you would go at 13, 14, 15 years old, your summer place where you would go for 2 weeks. Well, we went there for the whole summer. We developed these relationships. So I had that piece. I popped that in. And then I started doing a lot of interviewing. I interviewed lots of people that I had worked with, people that owned places that I worked at. And we just talked about philosophy and what made it great. What did we do that made us better servers or better bartenders or better business people? And so I just bandied that about, and I came up with these concepts, or these simple concepts that were important every time a customer walks through the door. So one of the women her name was Lori Lilly. She was the owner of a place, again, the Tia's, which I mentioned earlier. And she talked about being a woman in business, how the gentleman that she was married to at the time had some financial issues eventually. She never signed off on them. She was able to hold on to the restaurant and keep it going. So it was just this great story on top of her philosophy about what a server should be like. I mean, these back in the day, getting these jobs at bars like this was not like it is, but I believe like it is today, based on what I've seen out there. And that is, this was an inquisition. It was like getting a CEO job, a C-level job. I mean, it's like you met with 3 or 4 different people, then you had to go show how you pour, how quick you were, all these things. And then I met with then one day my son was leaving he's heading out to I think he was heading back to Dallas or to Baltimore. I forget exactly which one it was. And I said, "Hey, you want to go to a Red Sox game?" I said, "Sure." He's not even a Red Sox fan, but we did it. So we got in a bus because we wanted to be responsible. We got down to Boston, and I took him on a little tour of the places that I worked. And we started at Tia's. And I said, "This is where your mother and I met. This is how crazy it was in here, was whatnot." And then we went clear across the park to a place called the Boston Sail Loft. And you'll see that the Boston Sail Loft is pictured on the back of the book. And in there was a gentleman by the name of Jamie Tipping, who was a mentor of mine. He was about, I think Jamie is probably, I think he's about 8 years older than me. So he was way more mature than I was when I first started in these places and had his life planned out. He had a wife and a child and all those things. And he was just always had pearls of wisdom, and he'll collaborate on the peripheral knowledge chapter of the book. And so Jamie told my son about how he talks to people when they come to work at the Sail Loft. And especially if it's a college kid, he'll go, "Now listen, I know this is not going to be your last stop. But while you're here, let's learn a few things. Let's do some things and let's make some money. But when you're making your money on tips, don't consider it tips. Say you're working for commission. I'm providing you with product, a territory. Now take a business attitude. And so if you want to increase your commissions, maybe you should ask if they'd like coffee, or maybe you should ask if they'd like some dessert, or suggest one of the new items, right? And so we had a wonderful lunch there. Then we walked clear across Boston, just took them through Beacon Hill and whatnot, a different way if you know Boston at all. And we wound up at a place called the Fairmount Copley, because I had to have them see Phil Richards. It's Phil Richardson. Again, he was an old friend of mine from back in the day. He spent 47 years behind the bar, and he was the consummate professional. So my son and I sat at the bar. Phil acknowledged me, shook hands, embraced, and I looked at my son. I said, all that stuff you just heard Jamie talk about, now you're going to see it in action. And there he was, engaging customers, looking good doing it, being professional. What can I help you with? Giving you suggestions. Where are you headed today? If you're looking for music, you should go here. If you're doing that, and just showing just oozing hospitality. And Phil also, when he was done, so during COVID, and again, so this is before COVID that we were in there. Phil had decided that he was going to retire from bartending, and now he plants flowers in Quincy, Massachusetts. But he also did odd jobs, so I had him over at my place to do some painting and whatnot, and we just talked philosophy. And I was telling him the concept of the book and what I was trying to come up with, and I was getting affirmations on things, on suggestions, on things that I was thinking about for the book. And it was just like this collaborative deal. And so we then went to another buddy of mine that lived in the same area, with Plymouth, Massachusetts, is where our other place is. And Charlie Bletzer. Charlie and I go way back again. We worked in the restaurants together. We tended bar together. We tended bar at a place called Players in Hyannis, Massachusetts, where a band called J.D. Billy and Ken played. Now, you've all heard Sweet Caroline, whoa, 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 good times that never seemed so good. Guess where it started? With J.D. Billy and Ken.
Wow.
On Cape Cod.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, there's so much experience that you have, and obviously, I'm so glad that your friend inspired you to write it down, because like you just mentioned, there's so many people in your life that have inspired you, and now just speaking from experience and getting all of this put onto paper and out now and available. But what really was inspirational to you about this specific topic? What kind of led you to get it published and write it down?
Well, I think in the end, as I started thinking about where I started, when I came, I was the seventh of eight of an Irish Catholic family in Melrose, Massachusetts. And by 7, everybody's a little tired, maybe not paying as much attention, right? And so, my academic intelligence, let's say, was average at best. My combined SAT scores and my class rank have one thing in common: they're both in the triple digits. And so I think about that, but then I realized when I found a niche. I went off to college, I tried. I was not inspired, I had no direction, I failed. I was all the while working in the hospitality business, and then I wound up being a bar back, and I'm watching the bartenders, because bar back, break back is really what it is. It's such back-breaking work. You carry out cases of beer and whatnot, dragging out trash. And I looked at the bartenders and I'm going, that looks cool. I want to do that. So I set my sights. So now here I am. I have failed once, and my self-esteem wasn't its highest point in its life. But I set my sights on getting this bar job. And it happened to be back into where I summered, this little place in Whitehorse Beach I talked about earlier, where we wrote the ditty on my friend whose husband was dying of ALS. And so I went down, set my sight on the job, interviewed for the job, and I got the job. Win number 1. Mm-hmm. The aha moment came when I poured my first drink. Now, first of all, I got some instruction on how you should look pouring your first drink. Don't be timid, pour with authority. So I went and poured with authority, made the drink, put it down in front of the person, It's on this beautiful oak bar that we polished every year. They took a sip. Hey, that's pretty good. I was like, well, hold on. Maybe there's something here. I loved the immediate feedback that I got. That it was just, well. So now I start getting pretty good at this. Now using my interpersonal skills, working and introducing people. You might like to meet them. Oh, by the way, do you want to play a game of darts? Simple thing. Hey, we're going out for dinner tonight. Do you want to join us? This just nothing but just socialization, really. But I realized that I may parlay this into something else, and I also recognized almost immediately, within a year, because I did go back, I did take another swipe at school, hotel restaurant management. That didn't go well either, and because I realized that I did not want to. Well, let's say I wasn't focused on it. Let's be honest. And let's also but I also said that I didn't think I wanted to be in a restaurant for the rest of my life. I have nothing against it. I think it's a great profession, and I know many people that do it. Jamie being one of them. He still owns the same place. But I just knew it wasn't going to be for me. So what do? Well, people said, Neil, I think with your personality, you'd be good at sales. Like, well, there we go. Maybe we've got something here. So I set my sights on that. But I also knew that I had to get it back then. I mean, I think today, I still think today it's probably germane important to get your degree. I just said, I need to get this degree. So I went back and I developed a system on how I learned. Number one, they expect you to show up. You should probably take copious notes, actively listen, show up for the office hours, do the extra credit, get seen, be known, answer questions in class. And so the guy who flunked out of 2 community colleges wound up a 385 student. How did that happen? So I developed, just again, simple systems, nobody was splitting the atom, just recognized that now that I had interest, now I had a direction where I came out of high school directionless. I now had a direction. So I think that's my first person I started. So back to answer your question, that's who I think of. I think of, okay, who's rudderless? Who's lost in the middle? Who hasn't discovered their type of intelligence? Have you heard of Howard Gardner's book, The Frames of Mind?
Yes.
Well, you know about the 7 types of intelligence. God, I wish I knew that back then.
Yeah,
certainly would have done a lot more for my self-esteem, right? So you look at, where are you? So I have a little music ability. I have interpersonal skills. I have intrapersonal skills. And yes, I'm a middle of the road academic, and I can make it happen some way, shape, or form. But if I'm doing it, I know my system. My system is, if I'm going to read a book and I'm going to get something out of it, I need the book, the audio book, and I need to take notes. And then I get a fighting chance. So that was that's the answer. That's what I was thinking of back then. Now there could be other people, but yeah.
And I know that you touched on this a little bit earlier about how there's so many moving parts in this book, and a lot of people that you talked to and got some inspiration from. But what was the writing process like for you, getting all of this on paper and getting it published?
So when when I recognized what I had, I built what I reached out to those that I knew and could corroborate with and collaborate with. All the while, because of my system learning, I wrote it all down. And then what I did is I take big mind mapping artist pads, and I just dump whatever it was. I just put it on there, try to make some semblance of order out of it. But now it's in front of me, because if it's not in front of me, like there's piles all over here, because if I put it away, it's gone. right? So for me, it's got to be in front of me so now I can relook at it. I mean, I just realigned all the chapters again on a mind map a couple of weeks ago, just to redo it and just so. And then I took that, and then now I started to make formal outlines. And so now how would this flow? How would I? So I have really the first two chapters are of kind of memoirish stuff. The third chapter is research that I had done in the hospitality business. So the third chapter that was another piece I forgot about. That I had that piece too. I had done that previous when I first started thinking about this, and it's just how other businesses use hospitable, processes to engage customers, and so I had that. And then I started to see so all the things. So how would the next few things flow? It seemed logical that the importance of a proper greeting went first. So then I laid it all out. Then I started writing long form, and then putting it. So I would just keep drilling down on keep making more hierarchy in each chapter, and so then you could fill in the text under there, be it long form or on the Word doc, and then you edit, and you edit, and you edit, and you read it out loud, and then you edit, and you edit again. And I remember one day I looked at my wife going, "Are we really editing chapter 5 again?" And there we were, editing chapter 5. And in the end, I still found something when it was I just had to go back and do something. It's like, because one of the stories in the book is that my father decides to tell me at 81 years old, having a beer on my deck, that his mother, my grandmother, who I never met, she died when he was 17 years old, and the Wahlberg's grandfather, they're first cousins.
Wow.
Now, we've never met. There's nothing to that. My nephew did corroborate that because he saw Mark at a golf course, and he went over him. He said, "Is your grandfather?" "Yeah, it's my grandfather." "Oh, my great grandmother is this." That's all it was. But it was misstated, so I had to change it. It was like, because they're not first cousins, they're cousins. Who knows what's cousins? So the editing process is it's real discovery, and how we can change things and brighten them up, and you get a little bit more descriptive in the way whether you present something, like the aha moments. I think it's important. Is it important to understand that it's a beautiful oak bar? No, but it sounds good, and people can picture it. You can see the glass there with the light coming in. It's going through the glass. Beautiful summer day, or getting out of my car, going into the Boston Sail Loft on a crisp Boston day. Maybe the Red Sox is still playing. So just those simple touches, I think, enhance the reader's experience.
Absolutely. And who do you think that this book will benefit? Is there a select group of people? Is it more of a wider audience than people might assume?
Well, I think that the primary I believe I think it could be, primary is the kids like me. That you were, I don't think you have a lot of eight-person families like we did back then, but I mean, if you just haven't found your way. When I was writing the book, I was mentoring a young man, in using a lot of the techniques and talking about a lot of the stuff that we do in the book. And, I got him to meditate, move his body, and get out and get his mind right, get positive. And we talked quite a bit, certainly once a week. And we had some tasks to do and simple things, and we talked about it. And I believe that that the simple concepts and our little mentoring were brought him to the job he wanted. Lovely woman he married. I'm sure that was going on before, and we had nothing to do with that. But we actually wound up going to his wedding, and it was a wonderful time. And by the way, the funny part about the Friday of the wedding, when we were there, we got the call from Page. They accepted the manuscript. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
So I
incredible.
walked back. I went out in the restaurant. I get a call from New York. I was like, I know this is going to be a no. And I was like, really? Walked back in. I said, you're sitting with the future published author.
That is amazing. And has it dawned on you yet that you are a published author?
Well, now that I speak to him, I just had a friend leave the house, and he wanted a book because he's bartending. He's retired, and now he's come back. I said, I mean, what's your goal with being a bartender? He said, I just want to learn how to make drinks. Okay, so you're not looking to supplement your income? I said, no, I don't have to. I said, all right, here you go. Yeah. So yes, it's dawned on me, like with each review I get, the reviews have been very generous and strong. I think that people get it. I did some testing beforehand because I didn't know what I had, and I sent it out to some pretty discerning people in the manuscript form, and all three came back and said, "Oh, as soon as it's out, I'm buying 10."
Wow.
And of my nieces and nephews. So that would be the primary. Second, but I think it's worthwhile. It's like, no, oh God, I almost said it's like Dale Carnegie. No, it's not. It's like reading the rereading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You don't read it once. You read it again. You look at concepts. You go back. I think these will be great reminders to people. I think that, and I think they'll come up with their own stories, and I do that too. I come up with new stories every time. I just spoke on it yesterday, and the story that I tell on the importance of a proper greeting doesn't exist. It's not in the book. When I read it, I said, this would be a better way to present this, and it's about Home Depot. And how you walk into Home Depot, when Home Depot first came out, you'd walk through the door, there'd be a sea of people in orange aprons ready to help you. How are you today? How can I help you? Where are you going? Tell me about your project. Now you're off, you're getting taken in that massive warehouse to a spot, and they start talking about the different products, and they go over them each one. Tell me about your project again. Do you have a budget for the project? Okay, so maybe this is for you. How often do you use it? Any other germane questions on what would target the product? Now you walk in, they're hiding on you. There's nobody there. And maybe hopefully Home Depot says this and says, maybe we should go back to the 10-5 rule that they use at the Ritz. And that is when you walk through the door, and if somebody's 10 feet from you, they acknowledge you. And if they're within 5, they greet you verbally. And I think that would be a good thing. But now what's happened is that, and not that I do a lot of DIY projects, and Home Depot's doing just fine without Neil Rogers going into their store. But I go to the local guy. And you know what happens when you go to the local guy? It says hello. How can I help you? His warehouse may not be as vast. His or her warehouse may not be as vast, but it's pretty. It's getting, for most of the things that I want, it's everything I ever need. So yeah.
Well, we are missing that, personable aspect, I feel like, in a lot of these, especially these big chains, but even just in these bars and restaurants, I think a lot of people are missing that aspect. So this book is so beneficial to people in that industry, and you have such an incredible story of, like you've told in this interview today, not necessarily knowing your direction, but finding it and finding your passions and really tapping into that. So I think that's incredible. Your book is amazing for all types of individuals, I believe. And is there anything else that you want to mention or tell the audience about your book today?
I think I summed it up pretty good there a second ago. I think if it's an easy read. It's not good. It's something you can knock off certainly in a weekend. Leave it on your real desktop, on your computer desktop. Leave it in front of you. refer back to it. I think it would do, you know, it's one of those like little reference things, little reminders. So no, I think that would be a great way to consider it.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for joining us today. And audience, once again, his book, Bar Tips, is available now. You can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iTunes. It comes in ebook and paperback version, so make sure to get your hands on it today. Neil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Allie.